And there's your one warning that we are recording. My name is Malika Albrecht, and I'm the founding editor of Redheaded Stepchild. And tonight we are going to be celebrating with Joan Barasovska, Orange Tulips. And I want to read just a brief introduction before I turn it over to Joan. And I did also want to say it's super exciting to have here. And somebody could hold up the book. Joan, could you hold up your copy?
I can.
Thank you, Betty. There we go. So not only is she the author of the poems, that is the cover artist, that is the cover girl, Joan herself. I really love that picture. Joan Barasovska lives in Orange County, North Carolina. For 35 years, she had a private practice in academic therapy, working with children with academic and psychological challenges. Joan co-hosted and is co-hosting again, right? Y'all are back up and running?
Well, at Flyleaf, Janice Harrington and Ralph Earl are going to start up Flyleaf in January.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I'm going to start up McIntyre's in January.
There we go. I was going to say, I knew there was something that I needed to announce that's different from the bio I have in front of me. Fabulous. And in January, you have a full slate up until the summer, right?
Up until October.
Of next year?
Through October. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Whole year. Yeah.
That's incredible. In 2020, she was nominated for a Best of the Net and also a Pushcart Prize. Joan is the author of the chapbooks Birthing Age, which was Finishing Line Press, and we got to celebrate with her not too long ago for Carrying Clare, which came out in 2022. So we're going through a prolific stage here, and that came through Main Street Rag. Joan, I am going to turn it right over to you. And just a reminder to everybody to make sure that you turn off your mics. And if you would like to read for Open Mic, send me a message and I will write it down. Joan, thank you so much for letting us celebrate with you.
Well, thank you, Malika, for tonight, but also for continuing to host this marvelous series. I think it was sheer genius that gave you the idea and sheer endurance that keeps you doing it. So yes, this is my book from Red Hawk Publications, and this is me at age 16. I'm going to read you a story without comment. And I just want you to go with me on this story. Of course, there will be gaps, which you can fill in conveniently by purchasing the book. So let's begin. And we can talk afterwards. St. James Street, for Christine. The slate sidewalk in front of my house where we jumped rope, chalked hopscotch games, and threw the stones that marked our shaky 1-foot turns, spun hula hoops around our skinny waists until they crashed, yours before mine, mine before yours, and we bounced a small white ball to a song that timed a story. 1, 2, 3, a Larry, 4, 5, 6, a Larry. And the slate answered true, and it blackened with raindrops and burned with summer. And we took turns on stilts and spun off on zinging roller skates. I want to remember it all. I can't remember it all. $5905 Belmar Terrace. Mike and me sit in Grandma Elizabeth's kitchen, elbows on oilcloth. Grandmom gives us chicken soup with knedlach. She's made Is everybody muted?
June, sorry about that, Joan. I've muted people. There were quite a few people that were unmuted, so sorry about that.
Okay, here we go. 5905 Belmar Terrace. Mike and me sit in Grandma Elizabeth's kitchen, elbows on oilcloth. Grandmom gives us chicken soup with knedlach. She's made koteletten because she knows I love them, and kasha mit varnishkas. There's sliced tomatoes, cucumbers, and challah. For dessert, there's ice cream sandwiches we dug out of the freezer at Frank's Grocery. We're sleeping over at Grandmom's Saturday night, so Mom and Dad can stay out late without a babysitter. This morning, I named the flowers in Grandmom's garden: hydrangea, zinnia, snapdragon, gladiola, and everyone knows roses. Grandmom got down on her knees on newspaper to pull out weeds. I helped her water. It's summer now, but on New Year's Eve, when we sleep over, Grandmom wakes us up for midnight and puts us in our coats. We stand on her stoop to bang on pots with wooden spoons and watch the bad boys down the block set off firecrackers. Today, she took us down the hill to Cobb's Creek Park, a steep walk back, but we tried not to whine. There's a skylight in her bathroom with a long chain. The bathtub is very deep and stands on curvy feet. Even though I know how to do it now, Grandmom washes me with a wash rag and Sweetheart soap, just like she washes Mike. She scrubs our dirty knees and elbows hard because she's very strong. We are her Jonala and Michaela, her Kinderlach. We sleep together in the big bed in the front room. Grandmom tucks us in between thick white sheets. Her blue eyes smile behind her spectacles. She sings a Yiddish song. The giant mint leaf of the Briar sign on Frank's Grocery is our nightlight. Physics. A rectangle, like a dining table, but a trick table, weighted at one end, like a seesaw. Mother holding down the strong seat. Sister and brother like a fulcrum, locked in stasis. Father dangling from the high seat, denied gravity. A system, an experiment in force. The huckster. You don't want that cantaloupe, Mrs. Freeman. Smell this honeydew, sweet and juicy. Mom and me are standing outside Rago's truck early Saturday morning before it gets too hot. He's parked at his Saturday spot at 22nd and Locust. Neighborhood ladies with wheeled carts like ours are crowded around crates of fruit and vegetables, squeezing, smelling, sliding their choices into bags. My mother wears a house dress and flip-flops. I'm wearing my YWCA Some Fun Day Camp t-shirt. I like the huckster in his dirty apron. He hands me green paper that wrapped one pear because he knows I love to sniff the flowery smell. He weighs each bag on the tippy scale that hangs from a roof he props up for shade. He piles dollar bills and drops coins in a metal box. His hands are rough and hard. Brown bags of plums, pears, grapes, peaches, carrots with their greens pile up in our cart. Grazie, says Mr. Rego, as Mom counts out her pennies. Arrivederci, says my mother, as we turn and wheel away. (1963). Oh, I have to say, I'm from Philadelphia. I pronounce the word M-E-R-R-Y as Mary. Can't help that. 1963. I'm a merry Girl Scout in green uniform and felt beret. My troop is walking east across the Schuylkill River Bridge. It's an old bridge, prickly sandstone under our palms. You can sit on the ledge if you're brave. You can stand on the ledge if you're foolish. We look between the columns, way down to the water. How deep is it? Miss Kelly doesn't know. What I care about in one breath is the impact of a fall, the magnet of the gray river, the sick. I don't ask Miss Kelly why people jump. She knows about hikes, knots, campfires. Starting today, I'm the authority on jumping. Merit badges, saddle shoes, jokes I am famous for. I am 9, maybe 10. Now I have a secret so strong it makes me dizzy. On my honor, for God and my country, it's 1963 and I have fallen down. Girl on a bus. She sits in the back row of the number 17 bus, her cheek cool against the glass. She can't know why she's cried all day at school. She starts crying again, just wondering why. Nothing lifts the darkness she's in. She's written a poem about hope, the word itself a talisman to hold until this passes as quickly as it descended. She is not to know at 11 that this time is only the first. Her life will be marked by deep troughs, years just like this month she has no word for. She will be a teenager in a car, a young woman in a hospital, a wife, a mother, her cheek cool against the glass, wondering when it will end. This time. The sad girl pulls a cord, signaling the driver to stop at Walnut Street. She walks a block to catch the number 42 that will take her to her quiet house. The world looks dark and inexplicable to this child in tears. She rings the bell. The next poem begins with an epigraph from a song by Tracy Chapman. Done so many things wrong, I don't know if I can do right. All wrong. The built world defeats me. My apartment, the building where I answer phones, the sidewalks I walk on have all done great things to my nothing at all. If I were in charge, this city would be empty, wind blowing soot. Just look at me, a Shonda, disgrace, such a smart girl, drop out, break down, break up, crack up. I am 20. I read long novels. I walk and walk. I only feel well on trains and buses. I draw odd diagrams in small books. I don't wonder why I'm done for. I only want to be as useful as a sidewalk to hammer one nail straight. Happy 21st. To this lucky young woman with green cat's eyes and a red, green, yellow check shirt with mother of pearl snap buttons. She shouldn't be that thin, a girl like this one brought up to take care of herself. Her hair could be cleaner. Her skin is splotchy. It's a crowded room, but not a party room. It's an elevator going up to the 5th floor, and her parents are there, and a resident with keys. And with each jolt of the car, the birthday girl flinches because she is on edge. She's celebrating by signing herself in to an adult locked ward. This lovely young woman, pretending to be invisible, who has dressed for the party only to disappear. Funhouse. Not a turnstile, a trap door. Not the splash, the cyclone. No stepping off our merry-go-round. You stay after dark in this playground. Popcorn soaked in thorazine, lithium-laced cotton candy, the thunderbolts for emergencies. The tunnel of love is your dead end. Bumper cars, the penny arcade, everything hurts on this roller coaster. Call the guards, they strap you tighter. No one's safe on our Ferris wheel. The view from the top sends you crashing down. Fireworks pop in each boy and girl. Not a picnic, a bad scene. Not a day trip, a locked ward. Only a fun house with a freak show. Only a permanent detour. I've never told it before. Lauren was beautiful, tall, long, straight hair, and carved face. Excuse me. I think brown eyes. She sat with a disgruntled group of my friends, smoking on the lounge couches. She wore hip huggers, bell bottoms with frayed hems, always bare feet. Sometimes she screamed and had to be restrained. She took me into her confidence, me, quiet, nearly mute, in overalls I embroidered with a rainbow. We walked the shiny hallway up and down. It was acid flashbacks, LSD. She couldn't help what was happening to her head. It was all a bad trip and she hated this place. Exotic stuff next to my humdrum major depression. Her intelligence darted. She had cutting things to say about the doctors, nurses, psych techs, other patients. It was heady. I lived in the fog in my head, hardly seeing out. But people have always told me things. One day, Lauren told me in agony, "It's like there's cotton stuffed in my head. I can't stand it anymore." I couldn't stand my head either. I shared my plan. Unscrew the light bulb in the lamp by your bed. The lamp's screwed down, but you can get the bulb. Wrap it in a towel, smash it. Use a piece to kill yourself. That night she did it. At least I think she died. I don't remember if they told us, but I do remember knowing why the nurses and techs ran to Lauren's room and slid her off unconscious to the hospital. And the smokers and I stood by to watch in the lounge with the evening news on, and housekeeping came with buckets and mops, and none of us wanted to talk. Young tree. O tree, I prayed to, through a sealed window, through a steel screen. I traced your branches through 4 seasons. The television screamed, the people slumped and raved. I knew you, lovely one, from 5 floors up. God spoke through your buds and leaves to remind me I was still alive, to urge me to rise up, my tender, captive tree. The next poem begins with an epigraph from Psalm 102. I watch and am as a sparrow alone upon the housetop. It kept happening. I walked to work before dawn. I had a key. Something had gone wrong with a boyfriend. Doesn't matter. I was supposed to be better. I climbed circular stairs past our 2nd floor office, then up to the 3rd floor, then opened a window and climbed onto the roof. No one to stop me. I stood at that ledge for so long, close enough to sway, close enough to eye the narrow walkway to the church where my broken skull would lie. What held me at the edge was a vision of my parents staring at the mess of me. I hadn't seen that when I wrote my note. It had seemed cleaner. The sun rose. How did this look from a few buildings away? Not good to the 2 men yelling from their apartment window at International House. Was I okay? Did I need help? To shut them up, I climbed inside, slunk down the stairs and to my desk, where an ordinary Monday had begun. The police showed up. I was neither dead nor safe. This one day. Which morning did I wake safe from myself? A Tuesday in May? My December birthday? Curtains tugged aside, sunrise or later, floor beneath my feet, a lifetime cracked open to old age. In one breath, I could stand it. The only plan I had was breakfast and all the breakfasts ahead. In years to come, I would choke in gray waters, but I'd never sway on that ledge again, ever. Drenched. There's no in-between for a person like me, only up or down, drowning or sitting pretty in the lifeguard's chair, tooting my whistle, declaiming and super brave. There's the diving tank or the kiddie pool. No adult swim, no designated lanes. Admire me in my bikini on the high dive, blindfolded and in love at the same time. I was born without a snorkel or a skin, no dry land, no lessons, just jump in. The last poem I'll read is the last poem in the book. Summer's Start. June's early fire draws up dawn. Light deepens the morning world. It's cool before the dew burns off. Mud in the ditch and leaves in the road track last night's storm. The afternoon will be hot. My house is shaded, coddled by woods as I am coddled by solitude. I love this world I yearned to shed. Dusk falls softly into the earth. Light drenches my reawakened life, warms the small planet of my heart. Thank you.
Oh, Joan. Fabulous. That was very powerful. And I have to tell you, I am still immersed or struck by the recitation poem, the beautiful poem To the Tree. It's very powerful. If everybody wants to unmute, please do so, because I know I want to spend the time just going awesome reading, fabulous poems. I put the link in there where you can purchase the book if you don't already have it. I'm putting it in there again. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know people have questions because I know I do. So feel free to jump in. I didn't see any questions. I saw a lot in the chat section, which you're going to have to circle back to, Joan, and just see how many phrases and things that we pulled from the poems that resonated at the same time. You'll be like, it is pretty powerful.
I have questions too, but I don't think you can answer them.
Give us a shot. I don't know. Maybe we're magic 8 balls tonight.
I mean, no, please.
Julia, it looked like you had a hand raised for a moment, or did I misread that?
But anyway, I came here tonight in ignorance and in curiosity. I thought, well, I'm going to find out something tonight because I didn't know anything about Joan's work or her history. I'm so glad. Thank you, Malika, for bringing this wonderful poet to us tonight. I'm overwhelmed with your work. Thank you very much, Joan.
Thank you.
Christy, you had a comment?
I think I do. You had such a beautiful balance of the light and dark. How did you decide putting this together and come up with that balance? Because you did it flawlessly.
Thank you, Christy. I don't want anybody to leave this reading and kill themselves. That's a joke.
Yeah. We were just talking about how
yes. Really. And so I do think it's important. I've hosted many readings and I've learned how important it is to end with uplift or to release your listeners out into the world with, with some resolution, and to release your readers with some resolution too. I think the book is unusual because it tracks the the emergence of mental illness in a young child and a long crisis and recovery and a long recovery. I think that's very unusual. I haven't read a book of poetry that does that.
Yeah, and I think that what, Kirsty was really pointing out is that there is this, this place that we go into, and there's a lot of, phrases that you said that really, struck with me. I mean, neither dead nor safe is one that the minute you said it, three of us had a response. So I think that it's also something in the vulnerability and authenticity of the speaker of the poems that for me is a driving force. And I think some of the phrasing that you use is just so powerful. I only want to be as useful as a sidewalk to hammer one nail straight. I think there's something very relatable in that speaker's voice, and that they're Sheila, that you wrote before we started feeling where this was moving, and I think it was 2 poems in, you said, I think my heart is breaking.
I did write that. I did write that. Your poems, and in particular, the opening poems, where I felt the confusion and the pain of this girl. It was so real to me. And I think that's because your details are just dynamite. They're sharp as razor blades, and they are so well chosen that it just took me exactly to where you were. When you get really scared, there's that taste in your mouth, that kind of metal taste in your mouth. And that's the way those poems were for me. Every one of those was a metal taste poem for me. And I felt right there on the edge with you. I felt like I was there with you on that first ledge when you were crossing the bridge, and on the ledge leading to the roof. It was simply remarkable. And I appreciate you leaving me on a high note, because those poems are so identifiable. I really appreciated the lift at the end. I thought your poems were just spectacular.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you.
Regardless of the listener or the reader's sense memory, that's the thing. We're able to put ourselves into that poem, whether we've had a brutal upbringing or a righteous one. And for me, that's really what makes the work live, regardless.
Mm-hmm. But and I think going back to what people have been pointing out is that the exact details, the visceral nature of the words and how you evoke things, and it's so evocative that people were writing, Joan is making me miss the Northeast. That quite a few places people were noticing. Yeah, Donna wrote this. I love this sense of place in Joan's poetry. You can feel the life she writes, and I think that cumulative impact is very powerful as we get into the deepness of that fall, the impact that happens there, and then the recovery, the healing. Jump in.
It's a long book, and long, it's like 70 pages of poetry, I guess. And there's so you see a city child's life,
Mm-hmm.
and her father's store, clothing store, the supermarket, her mother taking her to the pen fruit and teaching her how how to be a housewife, how to buy food at the Penn Fruit, and her life with her beloved brother. So there's a great deal of background before and build up before the crisis develops.
And I think that the strength of your ability to recollect and bring these to life for a reader is a cornerstone of of your book, of your writing. Do people have questions about Joan's process? Or I know that Nancy and her are in a writers group together. So if you want to ask both of them questions, I'm sure Nancy remembers these poems in earlier iterations. Some. You're muted.
You're muted, Nancy.
Some,
Yeah, you go.
but
Yeah.
yeah, of course, Joan polished them far beyond what she brought to a workshop. So, yeah.
I'm in 2 critique groups. One that predates the Nancy group. The Poet Fools has been going on for, not with me, but for over 35 years. So without them, this would be a hot mess. But I've been working on this for at least 6 years. And some of these poems go back to that time. Some of them I wrote in my 20s. One of them I wrote when I was 16. They have changed, but not all that much. The press nominated 4 of them for a Pushcart.
Wow. That's awesome. And I love hearing that some of the poems go back to your teenage years, or that spark, that kind of continuity of writing. That's amazing to me. I really like that. Hang on, let me get to this message in the chat section. Okay. So you've been working on it for 6 years. Now, how did you know you were finished with it? Just out of curiosity, understanding how you put it together. Do you feel finished with it?
How do I know? Well, Christy, you asked me earlier about putting the book together. That I love putting the book together. I love the puzzle aspect of it. Spreading out all the poems and deciding on the order and what the gaps are and whether or not I want to or need to fill in a gap. COVID and the lockdown made this much better than it would have been. It really did. The isolation, I live alone, and the isolation of that, the project of it that I needed, allowed me unbroken time, which is so necessary, unbroken days to just polish line by line, to work line by line.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think a lot of us found ourselves having more time to hone our craft, or to it's that uninterrupted time. I'm not someone that can get into a poem and then jump back out and do other stuff that is required. So yeah.
How did I know it was finished? I don't know. It's an innate sense of, just that's it, that tells the story. Or trying to read it as if it's not mine, and thinking, that's a good story. That tells me. I'm a storyteller. I've realized that. This is my 3rd book, and I've realized each one is a story.
And, you know, I wondered, when you were, and I think you're a great storyteller, when you were telling the first part of the story, did the 16-year-old you frighten you now? Was it hard to go back and work on those stories?
Oh my God, yes, it was terribly hard. This was, yeah, I've omitted that part, that this was agonizing work, because you need to relive in order to write authentically. To use Malika's word, you need to relive the experience. And of course, as you're writing, you remember more and more and more, and the more horrible it is as you write. So no, in order to get it all right, but I was ready to do this. I was ready. It had taken me all this time. I'm almost 70 now. It had taken me all this distance and time to be ready. And it was time to do it. But yes, it was agonizing.
I have a question, Joan. Have you tried to write about this in memoir or prose form?
No,
Ever? No. Do you
no,
write prose or memoir?
no, I don't.
Okay.
No, poetry is my way, and letters.
Totally understand that. Totally get that. Leslie, you had a question?
Yes, Joan, I identify a lot with what you've been presenting in my own way. I struggle with putting that out there, putting the pain and the darkness out there, that I'm going to be judged because, you know, it's painful. I do try to bring most of my work into a resolution at the end of the poem, but I still struggle with, I shouldn't be giving, you know, putting this out there because it's dark. Did you ever feel like that?
Yes, well, it was more putting it out there because it's a kind of coming out for me. It's
Right.
a huge coming out for me. People think of me as strong and competent and functional and reliable, and here I am, you know, confessing a terrible period of weakness. But about writing about dark things, no, I think you have perfect license to do that as a poet.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, and
Appreciate
Leslie,
you.
I think that you're acknowledging the vulnerability that you know happens when you authentically talk about you know things that are darker or labeled a certain way. I mean, and I think, Joan, you said a key phrase, I was ready. And I think there's a strength in that. So when we, you know, write into the difficult places, which is the experience of our humanness, you know, and this is to me why I come to reading poetry. I'd have absolutely no interest in sunshines, rainbows, and unicorn farts. You know, I don't, and so I admire when somebody can be vulnerable, and I would say, Joan, I saw nothing but strength in all that you read tonight. But Leslie, I think that sometimes when I have a hesitancy about writing something, it might mean that I'm not ready to put that out there, and that's okay. I can write it for people that are close to me. Not everything that I write will I publish. And that is also okay. And there are lots of reasons why we might come to that. So I admire the question that you brought up, and I relate to that. And Joan, I really, really enjoyed this reading
Thank
and
you.
have a deep
Thank you.
affinity for the work.
The one more thing, the more artful a thing is, the more shaped and formed and worked, the more distant it is from the pain.
Mhm, mhm. And I think that's why we oftentimes say, yes, write on fire, but edit with ice. We do need some distance. Some things are too hot still.
Mhm.
And that's a real, I think that's a real experience that every writer has had at some point. You worked on something and thought, still hot.
But if I could have imagined, well, just two things. If I could have imagined at that time, just in despair in a mental hospital, that this would someday have occurred, have happened, and I'd be talking to you all, really. And another thing, if I had been able to read a book like this, come to a reading, nothing would have helped me more.
There's a huge advantage to not being alone.
Yes,
Right?
and
And hearing representation matters. This is why it's so key to have a diversity of voices out there.
the destigmatizing of mental illness. Yeah, that's okay. I want
not alone.
This read.
Not alone.
Not alone. No.
And so I do have some people for open mic, just to let, I've got Julio, Donna, Betty, and Leslie. If I missed anybody, please let me know. Send me a message or just shout at me. Julio, I'm coming to you. Make sure that you unmute. We've got you.
How's that? Can you hear me?
You're good.
Well, Michael, with your permission, I'd like to try a portion of a flash fiction I've written. It's in my book, The Color of Dirt, and there's some Italian in it. Never fear. I translate every bit of it. This is called La Cara Ragazzina Toscana. That means the dear little Tuscan girl. Molti anni fa ho incontrato una ragazzina una piccola città. Era Chiesina Uzzanese in Toscana, la città di mio nonno. Many years ago, I met a young girl in a small town. It was Chiesina Uzzanese in Toscana, the town of my grandfather. One of her favorite things was to laugh at me when I spoke and to look at my shoes. That seemed to be all she needed to capture my heart. Ma sei fuori? No, not crazy. And my feet can breathe. The shoes do not choke them. Come ti chiami? Mi chiama Fiorella, ma figlia in breve. I am called Fiorella, but Fia for short. She took me by the hand and led me to the side of the road. She picked a flower on the path and handed it to me and said, Sono il piccolo fiore e tu mi tieni in mano. I am the little flower and you hold me in your hand. She laughed and ran in what looked like a brown uniform created for this child of Toscana. Perhaps it was a birthright of her village. It did not complement her disheveled auburn hair. She knew the mischievous intent of her smile and the magic of her eyes. How can one so young and small understand the greater subtleties of living? This is Chiesina Uzzanese, not New York. If you want to hear the rest of it, you'll have to buy my book. Anyway, thank you for the opportunity.
That's a brilliant way to do that. Yes. That was fabulous. Because we keep going. And also, Julia will be featured here in, I guess it's a month. I'm trying to remember the date. Do you remember right off?
I thought it was February.
I think you're right.
Yeah, the 23rd. I'll look.
I was gonna say,
online.
I'm glancing now, so it's February 23rd. That way you can write it in your calendars.
Got
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Betty, I'm coming to you.
This poem is written about my days in Charleston. I spent 5 years in Charleston, so it's my most second favorite city. Fall drift down the Ashley.
Betty, is that you that got frozen? I can't tell.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Betty, I'll come back to you.
Symbiosis.
There we go. You're back again. It froze, so start over if you don't mind. Yeah, somehow we lost you, so you get to do
Okay.
it all over again.
Okay. Fall drift down the Ashley. My old fishing boat knew my path as I aimlessly floated on a balmy autumnal equinox. Tall cypress fills the bank with elegant Spanish moss draped gracefully on its arms. Blissfully living in a symbiosis of respect with knobby cypress, it's easy to see why the Native Americans called it tree hair. The Ashley settles into the afternoon tide in no rush, as is customary for afternoons around Charleston. The elegant crown of a blue heron comes into view, peeking behind an old cypress with gnarly legs, hugging the soft sand beneath. He is patient for an afternoon snack to float by, giving way to minimal movement so that the afternoon will pass with leisure. Turtles are sunning on a fallen tree with the sound of a bullfrog in proximity, croaking for a brief shower to cool off the air. The Spanish moss begins to wave its arms as the sky becomes ashen color. Then, rambling back to the dock, a piece of tree hair dropped on my head, draped over my glasses, hanging in front of my eyes. There is no rush to remove it. I want to keep my afternoon on me. Thank you.
I love that. There was something very playful in how your descriptions were. That was lovely.
Thank you.
Leslie, I'm headed your way. There we go. So make sure that you Leslie, you unmute,
Okay.
and
All right.
if you want to start your video, you can. If you don't want to, it's fine. So it's up to you.
Okay. Well, I don't want to start it.
You're
All
fine.
right,
Don't
so
worry about it.
This is called To Breathe is Absurd. Over tasteless salad, chicken maybe, I sit with my friend in the food court. She prattles about her chocolate addiction. Her struggle to abstain, she says, is hopeless. Miles away, my mind turns in a dark room, looks frantically for the door. If only my friend knew. I wonder if she is real, if I will ever feel again. Back at the empty apartment, I sit on the floor. My husband is at sea. Saying I do was disastrous. I am adrift with no anchor in another new town. Dinner is cardboard pizza with Neil Young. Don't let it bring you down. It's only castles burning. A woman selling time and Southern living pushes in the door. I can't read, I tell her. She looks at the boxes and the plates stacked precariously on the counter. She asks me if I'm moving. Going nowhere soon, I say, showing her out. If only she knew. Against all reason, I breathe.
Wow. That is really powerful, and I am so glad you read that. Look in the chat sections, Leslie. There's quite a few comments on the lines that were really resonating. And in that sense of isolation and that feeling of no one could possibly relate just resonates throughout that entire poem.
Thank you.
Yeah, Cardboard Pizza with Neil Young stuck with me too. I was like, I get that. Thank you very much. I am headed to you, Donna. There you are. I see you.
Well, I'm going to start with a photograph. My grandmother was absolutely in love with Bob Barker. So when she died, the one thing I wanted was the picture of Bob Barker that she took with her everywhere and told everyone that he was her boyfriend. So this poem is, my grandmother had a thing for Bob Barker. At 90, Anna Mae knew love had a time slot. 11 a.m., the price is right. Love had a name too, Bob. Weekdays were a late breakfast on a rusty TV tray. She ate 2 triangles of crisp toast with 1 pat of butter and orange marmalade, nursed reheated coffee in a chipped Limoges china cup, and carefully stirred in whole milk and sugar cubes with a sterling spoon, pinky up. When the show was over, she napped in her chair, snored like a spinning wheel, and mumbled a delicious dream. Come on down, higher, lower. I chose that one, I love, Joan, I love the way you write about the food that your grandmother prepared, and it reminded me of that poem.
Oh, it's fabulous. No, I think we all enjoyed that. And just the ending alone, that was, yeah, and love had a time slot. That's, thank you, Donna. That was fabulous. Oh, that's good stuff. I kind of want that poem. Nancy, I'm headed to you. And make sure you unmute. Yes, ma'am.
I've been trying to find Christmas presents for people and looking at magazines. So this poem came out of that. All the perfumes of Arabia. Fresh mandarin and bergamot, basil and lavender, floral tuberose and lily, woody, vetiver and amber, oriental sandalwood, jasmine and cardamom, molten gold and liquid jewels swim in sinuous vials crowned with crystalline stoppers. Adverts excite sensory expectations, entice consumers to pick a persona, be bold or arousing, romantic, exotic, or playful by scent alone. And it reeks. This pure propaganda promulgated by striking women draped in velvet, in diamonds, in nothing but scent, like Marilyn and her Chanel number 5. They pose on slick paper, slow-eyed sirens with flowing hair who stare back at the camera eye and lie as they perch alone or with some naked hunk on cliffs, under palms, in foaming surf, glittering ballrooms, or satin sheets. Curly script framing lithe forms promises muse or bombshell status and a lingering, unforgettable presence. Layouts insinuate wearers will languish in luxury's lap, floating in a cloud of perfumed air, for la vie est très belle. Caveat emptor, all who page through Vogue. Learn from another lady how all the perfumes of Arabia will fail to make foul smell sweet.
I just realized I was muted. I'm sitting here talking. Nancy, that was fabulous. That was wonderful. Thanks again, guys. The open mic never, always is astounding and never fails to, to just lift my mood and go, God, there's so many amazing people out there writing. Joan, it was wonderful to be in your company. Really enjoyed hearing the poems from this collection. Yeah, we can clap for open mic and for Joan.
For open mic.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, you open mic.
Oh, for all of it. And I will get things to you, Joan, probably in the next couple of days. So Great to see everybody. Thursday has been the highlight of my week for a number of weeks in a row now.
Thank you,
Be well.
Monica.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.